I do believe that my grandfather has the answer to that question. He had to do 3 years of mandatory military service in Yugoslavia, and he always told me that he loved the army life. It didn't strike me until a couple years ago to sit down and ask him, if he loved the army so much, why did he go back to farming in the village? Because, Matthew, you cannot get promoted unless you join the party, that is the Communist Party. Well, then you were an ambitious man, grandfather. Why didn't you join the party? Because, Matthew, if you are in the party and they say this is black, he was pointing at his white tablecloth, then you have to say it is black, even though it is white. English is my grandfather's 5th language. I promise he has never read George Orwell's 1984. But this is exactly the 2 + 2 = 5 scene. I think about this scene a lot when I am told that men can get pregnant. When the truth becomes illegal, everything breaks. If you can't say what's wrong with the tractor, or the levy, or the hospital, or the passport office, you can never fix it, and it will stay broken. So not willing to give up on speaking the truth, my grandfather went back to the village. After a few years, though, the farms were all socialized, and eventually the starvation got so bad they had to make a break for it. Now, I have stories of our healthcare system and universities going back 13 years ago and going up all the way to last fall, when my bleeding postpartum wife spent 6 hours cradling a 2-day-old baby in the emergency room while not being seen by a physician. When I told the triage nurse I was going to take my wife to another hospital in the next town over, he said, "That would be great, thank you. There is no place for her here." If you go to one of our ERs and get treated like cattle, like my wife was at that time, you have no recourse. They would be really delighted if you took your business elsewhere. When farming is socialized, you get bread lines, and people died of starvation while standing in Soviet bread lines. When healthcare is socialized, you get lines in the ER, and I promise you people have died and are dying in waiting rooms, in emergency rooms across this country right now. You might think that I'm being overwrought and seeing the ghost of communism where it does not exist. However, I would note that we just spent 10 years with a prime minister who, when asked which government in the world he most admired, stated the basic dictatorship of the Communist Chinese Party. A prime minister who released a statement lionizing brutal communist dictator Fidel Castro when he died. A prime minister whose answer to every social problem, dental care, child care, pharmacare, school lunch, climate change, what have you, was always more socialism, more central planning, more top-down pronouncements, less freedom to make choices for yourself and your family. The zenith of all this top-down control came during the pandemic. The members opposite went full communism. They locked Canadians down in their homes. They ruined weddings, funerals, Easters, proms, and Christmases. They closed the borders. They kept mothers from children and brothers from sisters. They deprived this House of its ancient rights. They spent $600 billion of taxpayer money with no budget, doubled our national debt to pay healthy 16-year-olds to sit in their basement. Then, as now, they did all this in the name of crisis management. Physicians, professors, and journalists who spoke out against these abuses were hunted down. They had their licenses and their jobs threatened. I know this because it happened to me. At Queen's University, where I taught, Jane Philpott herself, one of the only 2 cabinet ministers to speak truth to Justin Trudeau's power, informed me